Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a submission by Myra of the horse Anton. Anton is another reschooling project, and she's been having difficulty getting him to stretch and accept the shambone, but actually I think it's going quite well from what I see here. You're having moments where the horse is getting all the way there in the walk, and once you're over that hump, it's just a matter of time before you can get the horse first in the trot and then in the canter ultimately. So I think you're right on track here, and you see how as this horse's neck begins to stretch out, look how more beautiful the walk becomes. Look how more swinging and active it is. Once again, like your other horses, this is a lovely horse with lots and lots of potential, who just obviously got off to a bad start, as sadly so many do these days. But you're back to getting this horse on track, and I think if you stick with this, you're going to really get there. Now, it's kind of interesting that you're using the little rag at the end of your lunge whip there. That isn't something I would do because it would interfere with my ability to use my whip correctly, and that it would be difficult to place the lash exactly where I want it on the horse. So the idea of something like that is that it's kind of a little more of a visual cue to the horse, that the horse begins to see it, so to speak, coming. But like anything else that is consistent, like putting a rope around the back of the horse's hindquarters, these sorts of things, it may work for a while, but you may find that eventually it's not going to work. So there's not a horse in the world that I've ever worked that I didn't have to occasionally tap him with the whip just to let him know what that was. Once again, remember, we never snap a horse at a whip. That's something with a whip. That's never what you want to do. But when you want to use it, you want to be able to just bring it up and touch it exactly where you need it to be, usually in that fleshy area above the hocks there on the buttocks. The only other two places we ever touch the horse are on the side, where your leg would be. And if you're very, very good at this with a horse that's flipping around, you can touch him on the shoulder to straighten them out and send them back over. But you need to be very good at this to be able to do that. So once again, that's the only thing I see as a problem with what you're doing there with that thing, is I think the horse will eventually forget about it, and you may need to you will eventually have to be able to touch the horse with the whip at some point. But if that's working for you, I have no problem with it. Other than that, I think it would interfere with your abilities down the road. As I said, if you have more skill with the whip, which is really the skill of lunging horses, is the ability to put the whip on the horse when you need it and where you need it at exactly the right amount of intensity or less of intensity. So it really has much more to do with it. But once again, you seem to be getting a pretty good result here. So once again, I have no problem with that. The horse is beginning to swing out actively. But you see how kind of inaccurate that whip is when you have it like that, as you're kind of dragging this thing along. So it would be very difficult to make it, put it exactly where you want it to be. But once again, you're getting a good result here, so all good. As the horse is beginning to stretch, once again, we just see how much better this walk is as it becomes there. She stretches down. So you're getting the horse all the way there in the walk. So that means you're going to get the horse all the way there in the other gate. So just be patient. I would say this horse is responding pretty well to the shambone. You really wouldn't want it much tighter than what you have it right now. It's really about right. And once again, it's learning that it's sending the horse through from behind is what gets the horse ultimately up. The shambone just helps the horse to stretch into the position that we want and remind the horse not to go up, when it wants to go forward. The horses that have become very ewe-necked and that have forgotten how to work correctly, that is. But right there is a good walk. So once again, we'd like to get to the point where that's the walk we're getting under saddle. And I wouldn't even be bother going to the trot under saddle until you do. I mean, that's basically the rule of thumb. And once you understand that, it just simplifies everything we do with training horses. You just don't want to do anything incorrectly. If it's incorrect, you want to stop that and go back to something you can do correctly until you get that correct, and then try to move forward again. And once you understand that basic philosophy, it just takes all the fight out of what we're doing here. Because once again, when horses resist, it is almost always has its origins in a physical disability. That is, you're asking the horse to do something it simply can't do. So it goes, what do you want? No wonder they pin their ears back and they kick out and they do all the things that we see horses do and grind their teeth and swish their tails. They're trying to tell you in every way they can that what you're asking them is not a happy thing. So it's just a matter of, so many people have this mental attitude. I call it rent string mentality, which is that the horse must always be made to do the things that we ask it to do. And, real correct training is getting the horse to be willing to do willingly what we ask them to do and to be a willing partner in it. That's the only way we get horses to really try, and once again, even even trying on over fences is something you can really feel, but you feel the same thing when you work horses correctly in a dressage ring. They start looking forward to it. They're active. They come out. They get into what they're doing. They really look forward to their work, and they really try for you to give them their most. And once you get that, it's a totally different way of riding than the thing that we have become used to, this sort of rent string mind where, that's how it was at the rent string, I call it, because, the toughest kids would get put on the difficult horses and the people would have them beat them up and make them go forward when they had become totally sour. But unfortunately, that's really not how you want to ride and train horses. That's just kind of how you get by on ones that have been ruined. But really good stretch here in the walk. And once again, when you get this walk like this, under saddle, then you're going to be ready to go to the trot work. That's really, really good work there. So working in hand, once again, you're getting a really good result here. The only thing I would add to this is just putting the whip in your right hand so you have a leg, so to speak. Once again, I just advise you to go and watch my videos on work in hand. They're pretty explicit on how to do all of that, and get that going, and then you'll really be able to improve it a little more. So you're getting a good stretch even doing what you're doing here. Now you're getting a little far forward on the horse there. You want to stay back by the horse's shoulder, because while nothing is going wrong here, we must always remember that being at the horse's shoulder is where we want to work all the time, because if something does go wrong, the horse has very little ability to move laterally compared to its ability to move forward. So we always want to be at that safest place to keep from getting stepped on or run over, whatever the case may be. And believe me, when we're working young horses, that's the whole thing. You must always be prepared. Be a good Boy Scout, because you never know what's coming. You never know when a tree next to you is going to fall down or what's going to happen. I mean, I've seen so many different things, and always expect the unexpected, because it's always going to happen with horses, and when it goes bad very quickly. So once again, that's why we want to always be at that place next to the horse's shoulder. So just a little further back than you are right there. You see, this horse could almost be stepping on your heels there. So being a little more careful, and then getting the whip in your outside hand, and that will give you more ability to train the horse of what it's supposed to be doing, moving off of your leg. Then when you get up on top, you'll be able to translate that into the movement and getting the horse ahead of your leg and getting the stretch deeper. So that's how you have to think about this. This work in hand is really a preparatory work to getting on the top and doing the exact same thing. But the way you're going about it here with no whip in your right hand, you don't have any leg. Now, fortunately, this horse is still going off. I mean, I think you've gotten quite far doing it this way compared to what you might do. But it will just get much better if you can get that whip in your right hand in this case and get the horse moving ahead of your leg. And then it will translate, as I said, once more when you get on the horse's back. But if you can get the stretch you're getting here at the walk, just keep faith, because if you can get that, if you just do that long enough, pretty soon you'll be able to do it in the trot. And after that, you'll be able to do it in the canter. But it takes time. So again, always remembering that it takes 2 years to put the foundation on a horse. It takes 1 year to establish the top line, and 2 years for that top line to go through the change that must happen, pulling the withers up through the shoulders and balancing the back in a way that can only happen over time. It's not something that can ever happen overnight. That's what I say. The only dramatic changes you can ever make in a horse in a day is to get the horse simply stretching. A horse that's not stretching, getting it to stretch. That's the most dramatic improvement in any horse you can ever make in a day. And of course, that's a huge one, because it solves most of the problems that go along with everything else. Beyond that, everything is just the steady progression of moving forward, taking one step at a time, just trying to improve every day. That's what I do with my horses. I just try to do something a little better every day. I got to keep the horse rounder a little longer, whatever the case may be. I just keep pushing the envelope a little bit each and every day, but always building on my foundation, always starting at the same place. I highly recommend people, if you've never done it, and I know quite a few riders who have. I used to take karate training, and while I have no desire to, get in karate fights with people, the training of it was very, very good for your body, in that they really teach you how to train your muscle memory. Because the whole idea of karate is you practice, just like we're trying to do with our horses. You start off every day, and you go through these same exercises in the same order, day after day. And it basically trains your body to respond in a certain way, and pretty soon it starts responding like that. Well, that's exactly what we're doing with the horses. So, once again, anything that helps you relate to the horse. That's why every rider, as I say, you'll never be a better rider than you are fit, so to speak. because you've just got to be, if you want your horse to be an athlete, you have to be strong enough to carry your own body when you're on the back of the horse. That is to keep your posture in the correct position. That's what takes strength, not strength that we use against the horse. It takes strength to keep our body aligned so that we can stay in balance. But really good work here with that stretch, and just know that that's going to ultimately get there. Both of these horses that Myra has shown us have been lovely horses, and they're really going to be nice to watch and develop. You know, people often say, have commented, it takes you 2 years to get a horse in collection. Well, yes, it certainly does. It really takes 4 to complete that process. And if you read any good book by any master of the past, they will tell you that. So horses have not changed. What has changed is the breeding of horses is very, very good these days. So very often horses at 3 and 4 years old today, a lot of these warm blood breeds look quite mature. They look like they're built very uphill. They look almost like they're ready to go, but they're not, believe me, just because they look that way. And that's why so many of them end up looking so absolutely terrible. It was a very interesting thing yesterday. My wife and I were looking at clip art online of horses, like silhouettes of horses, thinking about using something for a logo. And it was amazing because all the clip art, you should all do this. Put in a search for dressage clip art online and see what comes up. I want to do a video about this. Every one of the clip art videos, the horses are completely hollow. It's really interesting that it's gone bad for so long now that it's become in the social unconscious, so to speak, to think of dressage horses as these upside down things with their hips all tented and hollow backed and their heads way up in the air, and front legs sticking straight out, back end barely moving. So look at that. It's a rather interesting thing. So getting to your walker, I love the activity of this horse. It's really going to be a beautiful horse when this horse really gets over its back. And I think what you're going to find is that what we talked about before there, the work in hand is what's going to solve that, and getting your work in hand using a whip so that you can teach the horse more about the leg as you send it through. Now, one thing you do want to do, which I see you doing here a little bit, while you have quite a nice position on the horse, it's a little bit round-shouldered down and forward, and you're holding your hands rather down low, kind of thinking that helps the horse stretch. It doesn't really. It would help the horse stretch more. You see how you come around there, you've just got your shoulders around it and your back is tilted forward. So that means you're really not in balance yourself. So the big takeaway here for you today is I want you to stretch up more. Think of lifting your chest and flattening your shoulder blades into your back to bring your back into alignment. And then put your leg on and see if it isn't more effective. And if it isn't, then what we can actually do from there is lift up and come back even a little further with our shoulders, like doing a yoga stretch, like you're going back over a wall or over a ball, so to speak. So you lift up and back and you arch up so that you actually lift your seat off the saddle a little bit. I'll do a video on this. In fact, we're working on this for our extensive video collection that will come out in the spring. I believe we will be releasing the first of these. And it's going to be a very systemized thing that you can go to and just see, everything about everything in order. So look forward to that in the future. So in the meantime, what I need you to do is just stretch up, as I said, flatten your shoulder blades into your back, and you'll have an easier time getting the horse in front of your leg. And when a horse is hollow, what we want to do by stretching up and back like that, we even want to close our upper leg a little bit. So we lift our seat off the saddle, but yet at the same time we're lifting up and away from the horse and back, which tends to make our legs more active to send the horse forward. It'll help your legs to send the horse forward. And then once you feel the horse come ahead of your leg, so to speak, in the ball form, then you sit up straight on top of the ball. So just a little bit that you're doing here of just having your head just a little bit down and your shoulders rounded forward and your hands so low, it basically shifts your weight onto the horse's forehand, making it harder to balance the horse. As soon as you learn this, you're going to see how much easier it is to do this. So that's basically what you're missing from your position. You just need to stretch up. So there's more than one position on the back of the horse. Now the straight up and down position is what we want when the horse is round and up underneath us and support us. Then we sit absolutely straight and we feel the ball support and keep up underneath us, just like a surfer on a surfboard. But if the horse is not round, then we don't want to lean forward because that's going to press the weight more forward onto the horse's forehand. So we want to stretch up and back, once again, like a yoga stretch, like you're going over a ball backwards. Try it standing up. And arch your back and go back. And then at the same time, you can just lightly close your seat on your thighs a little bit on the saddle as you stretch up and back and put your leg on. And feel how the horse will come back up underneath you. Because once again, if we're sitting straight, we're asking the back to come up. If we sit dead straight on the back, we're basically pushing down right where we want the horse to come up. So once again, it's going to make a big, big difference just to be able to lighten the seat. So that's what we have to do, is we have to show the horse where the open door is. Much as when we rein back in a correct rein back, that's the one time you do lean forward, because you let your seat lighten, and that impulsion will just send the horse right backwards. If you haven't seen that, watch the last video that I did on Amber on collected canter, and she does rein back for only the 4th time in the horse's life, and he does it perfectly. She just comes a little bit forward, closes her leg, and the horse just flows beautifully back, and that's what you want to see. So once again, you're going to find that it's going to be a little easier, I think, when you do this. And then basically you can just keep your hands up in the place where they belong. You know, every beginner always thinks, well, I'm pressing my hands down to make the horse go down, but it doesn't really work that way. Now, you're doing a good enough job of keeping your hands light and not holding there. The worst thing is when people try to actually hold against there. But you might find it easier and a more advanced position is to bring your hands up where they belong more, work with them a little higher position. And even as the horse, if the horse brings its head up, you want to follow upwards with your hands so the horse can't escape the contact, but without ever taking a full backwards press, so to speak. You always have that same lightness in your hands. That's how we get lightness. Lightness never comes from holding a horse against your hands until you get the false lightness of the horse breaking at the 3rd vertebrae. And once again, if any of you do my little search on the clip art thing, which I highly recommend you do, look how many of these silhouettes of horses in this clip art are all broken at the 3rd vertebrae. They're hollow in the back. And this has become normal. Now people are using this clip art as examples of what they're doing, you know. So we found it almost impossible to find a horse that wasn't hollow in the clip art online, which tells me, you know, an amazing thing about how pervasive and epidemic this whole thing has become. People have to relearn how to see horses. They've forgotten what horses are supposed to look like. So just there, if you would just stretch up and bring your hands up to the degree that you lift your chest and just come up so you can stretch up and back and then put your leg on. Always remembering in the walk to use your legs alternately and not at the same time. So when you want to ask for more from the horse, you just feel that inward swing and just follow that inward swing with your leg. And I think when you do that, you're going to find all of a sudden, because this horse is ready to stretch, I can see, but it almost looks to me like every time it does start to stretch, you lean your shoulders even more forward. Then that's not what you want to do. You want to stretch up and away. See right there? See how you came forward right there as the horse started to stretch? That's what stopped the horse. So you've got to stretch up. You're just slightly ahead of the motion all the time. And that's rarely, as I say, the only place you want to do that is when we rein back, is the only time you want to be ahead of the motion. Now, I noticed that some of the German people who talk about stretching horses, you know, say that you should lean forward, but you notice in the pictures I see done of that, because I looked into it, because it's a confusing issue, is that in those pictures they're riding with very short stirrups. Now, if you're riding in short stirrups, so short that you're able to get into a 2-point position, well, then you can do that. But when you have a long dressage length stirrup like you have here and you lean forward, it dumps you actually lose balance and just end up kind of on your toes, and you know, ending up having to grip with your thigh to keep yourself from going forward over the horse. So that stretch up is going to make a big, big difference. So those of you who may have seen this in some of the things the Germans talk about, just know that, take that for a grain of salt, that look how short the stirrups are on the people that are seen doing that. And it's okay to do that, once again, if you have a jumping length stirrup where you can balance through your lower back instead of through the whole length of your body as we do with a longer stirrup. But this is all coming really beautifully. I think both of these horses are going to turn into lovely animals. It's just take a little patience with the other one. But this is right on track. And once again, don't bother to do anything else until you get the walk worked out. It just doesn't help you in any way to trot a horse around upside down. It's just wasting your time and laming up the horse. It's like driving a car with no shocks on. They will eventually fall apart even if you're just walking them. But the beauty of the walk is it really gives you time, as Nuno Oliveira said, it's where we explain everything to the horse. So it's not only where we explain everything to the horse, it's where the horse explains things to us as well. So it's a two-sided coin. Once again, remembering always that real riding is about listening to the horse. The horse has to be a willing participant, not just a slave. We just can't impose our will upon the horse. And if you do ride like that, you certainly don't want to try to ride the horse in any kind of frame, like the old hunters used to do with a standing martingale. That's why they gave them a standing martingale, so they wouldn't mess with the reins. They would say, just kick the horse forward and leave him alone. And the horse is certainly better off ridden that way. And of course, a lot of dressage people came from that same kind of mentality. Then they tried to equate that into dressage, and it just doesn't work that way because they never learned to ride with their legs. So great work with here. Try to improve those things in your seat. I look forward to seeing this horse again very, very soon. Great job. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride.